talk about Maverick Viñlaes, because that came straight out of the desert night, directly to the front of a MotoGP Grand Prix. Dave, what were you thinking sort of watching there? Because it must have been a surprise to every single person that tuned in to watch round 4.
Well, first of all, I thought, oh, look, it's Maverick, the random number generator. Because, I mean,
give him some credit.
No. This is me giving him credit, because that's the point. You can't be a random number if your random number is always between 10 and 15. It's because, sometimes it's 18, sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 6, and sometimes it's first. It was genuinely a really, really impressive ride by Maverick. It's a good track for him. That suits him. He seems to have the KTM a little bit sorted. For me, the most concerning thing is not so much Maverick, it's the rest of the KTMs, because the KTMs were spread right throughout the field. I think Pedro Acosta was very happy. Brad Binder had, I think he said, the worst weekend of the in MotoGP. Anaya is sort of all over the place. It's just really, really difficult to find any sort of line or pattern in what is going on with KTM. The bike, in the right conditions, the bike will work, and it worked for KTM. It worked for Maverick here. I think it was sort of the Mercurial Maverick plus sort of a bit of a weird KTM thing, really.
I know as professional journalists, we are supposed to maintain an air of objectivity to who we want to succeed and who we don't. In fact, we don't want anyone to succeed or to fail, because we just want this.
No, we want them all to fail.
We want to observe things playing out, and then we want to report on them as proper professionals. But I will admit to standing up and punching the air on several occasions as Maverick was getting towards the front. And then when he actually overtook Franco for the lead, I mean, it was just stunning stuff. It was absolutely ridiculous. To have thought at any point in the weekend that Maverick would actually be leading the race was just like sort of, you're talking the realms of fantasy. A little bit fortune, I think, in the fact that, as I previously mentioned, Alex and Digia took themselves out. Well, Alex took Digia out off the run-in for the podium. That certainly helped. But you could see that Maverick was really able to utilize a couple of the KTM's strengths. I mean, it has really, really good top end. You can see it on the front straight.
It is
so fast. He was able to overtake riders kind of at ease, and we're talking about Ducatis here. And then he just seemed to be very, very confident in braking as well. Which I don't think has always been the case with him. It took him some time to understand that, but he said he made a step, I think, before or in warm-up in Argentina, and since then he's been feeling pretty good. I remember speaking to Hervé Poncharal just after the race in Coda. Hervé was absolutely adamant that had he not had those issues on the start line, where I think his bike stopped twice and he had to... Did he have to start from the back of the grid? Anyway, Hervé was adamant that he had top-secret potential in Kota. So I think this has been building, but certainly I don't think any of us were expecting them to be building to this kind of level of brilliance. It was just another reminder that this guy is one of the most talented guys on the grid, and it does make you, as we've said millions of times over the years, it does make you pull your hair out as to why we don't see this more often. However,
exactly.
But what a wonderful side it is when we do see it, what a wonderful side it is.
Oh, of course it could be the start. It's definitely going to be the start. He's been in MotoGP, what, 10 years or something, and we see the same thing over and over and over again, and all of a sudden the consistency is going to come falling out of sort of the clear air. This is finally the trigger that he needed to be there every weekend. No, I mean, it's just an amazing ride by Maverick. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely proof that the dude is so fast, so talented. But we'll get to Jerez and then he'll be, I don't know, 9th, 4th, 17th.
No, have some faith. It could be Marc Marquez's toughest ever title challenge. Well, it's not anymore, because I think he's down something like 18th in the World Championship after losing all of his 20 points. But yeah, goodness. You're right there, guys. I think the confusing thing is that for KTM, just the disparity between the different performance levels of the machinery. I mean, Pedro Costa's gone back to his 2024 setting. That was one of the narratives here this weekend. And he was also messing around with the ergonomics of the bike, he was saying in his Spanish debrief. And he was very content. I mean, he was happy. He moved up from something like P13 all the way up to P7. Eventually finishing P8 after the adjustment of the order post-race. But Acosta seemed in a slightly more cheery vein. Brad Binder described it as the worst weekend he's had in his MotoGP career, which began in 2020, so quite some time. Clearly, the team still have some work to do to make the South African feel pretty strong. But like Neil was saying with the top speed, I think Binder was regularly topping like the speed traps, certainly sort of on Friday and Saturday, even though we had that strange kind of differentiation between the top speeds that were being recorded for a while, just down to track and air temperature. And we even had quite a bit of wind today on race day compared to Friday and Saturday. We had a question in from Nick Saban who said, how long does it really take to get tyre pressure sorted out after a race? It must have been a good hour before the official verification.
At least.
It popped up on the FIM Sportify app that Viñlaes had been given a 16-second sanction. Why is that, Dave? Do we have any kind of insight as to the reason for that delay?
Well, I mean, the process is that during the race, the tire pressure has been constantly monitored, so they can actually check or live as it happens whether they're going to be over or under the tire pressure rule. If they're under the pressure, then what happens is the bike has to come in. And the other thing is, because Maverick was actually in Parc Fermé, they couldn't download the data off his bike. So he has to, they come in, they get the data off the data logger. They compare the data from the team sensor and the official sensor to see the differences between it. They calibrate it, so they take a tire pressure with a tire pressure reading with a hand held tire pressure gauge, and calibrate that against the measurements, and then they inspect the tires to see if there's any particular cause. So whether there's a reason, like for example, a dented rim or whatever, a reason which might explain it. So the reason it takes so long is because they want to get it right. They don't want to be just handing out penalties willy-nilly. They want to get it right, and so they have to give everyone, and also including the team, for example, they have to give the team the chance to respond, and the team the chance to offer an explanation for why it happened, other than we got it wrong. For me, the reason that he got it wrong was because they probably set the tire pressure for Maverick to be riding in a group, but then he ended up leading the race. So he's got lots of cool air on his tire, and the pressure probably wasn't set for that.
Yeah, he only led the race for 5 laps, though. It wasn't as if he was out front for half the race or so.
No, but he wasn't sort of like in the middle of it. Do you know what I mean? Like he wasn't stuck behind a bunch of other riders for a long time. And you only have to be slightly above or sort of slightly below. So I think that might have been the difference.
Yeah, I spoke to Hervé Poncharal very briefly after the race, after the penalty was handed out as well, and he insisted that the amount with which they fell under the parameters of what is correct was minuscule, really minuscule. So it was really very difficult for him to take. And he also said that when Maverick was first passed by Marc towards the end of the race, he said that Maverick let him by. I think he ran wide going into turn 6, and we thought it was a mistake. Hervé said that Maverick was obviously getting some information on his dashboard to say, look, you're dangerously close to the limits of this front tire pressure. So he let Marc through. Maybe there was an issue then that Marc was able to pull such a gap on him. He wasn't really able to stick a Marc slipstream after that. And that could have been another thing that led to the fact that he wasn't able to get the tire pressure up again to a certain level. I guess it's something I want to open to you guys. Is this a good look for MotoGP? We've had a race illuminated by this sensational performance by Maverick. He was the surprise and the big talking point from this evening's race. And then we have this ludicrous situation now where, we have to sort of rewrite the history books after he's been on the podium. He's been in the press conference afterwards. And I just think it doesn't really look very good, does it, for the sport?
Yeah, the gravitas of it is heavier because it's a KTM. It's not a Ducati, and it's a rider that, like Dave says, is prone to these sort of wild swings in fortune. And I think, if it had been, not to take away from their potential or their skills, if it had been Morbidelli or, a Digia or like an Alex Marquez, then I don't think it would be quite as sort of impactful. It's not a good look for MotoGP. I don't think it's a good look for Michelin, who are pretty much, well, they're on their way out of the sport. I think it's a tough sell. And also, it just has a lot of fans and hardcore followers of the sport rolling their eyes again, thinking, here we go.
It's quite scary seeing the guys coming through the next lap around with Jorge being worked on at the side of the track with yellow flags waving. But yeah, it was a pretty sickening one. And unfortunately, it looks as though Jorge's going to have another fairly lengthy spell on the sidelines, and that's going to be so painful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one cracked rib. Fortunately, it's never happened to me, but I've heard that it is agony having one. 6 fractures is going to be just insufferable.
Yeah, I've cracked a rib, and it really does hurt. So 6 is going to be bad. And yeah, first of all, the most important thing is he survived, because being hit by another motorcycle is really, really bad. I did actually go back and look, because it looked, when you see the replay, it does look really bad when you see the people, the medics working on Jorge at the side of the track while riders are going past, while bikes are going by. I went back and I watched the helicopter view and I watched the onboard view. The thing about the camera work, about the shot that we saw, is that those cameras tend to really foreshorten everything. So it looks like everything is really, really close. When you look at the helicopter view, then what is happening is the Jorge Martin was he was sort of off of the line. So he was off to one side and he was quite a long way back. So they weren't as near to the track as it looked. And also what was I really noticed was watching from the onboard. I think it was Mark's onboard, that you can really see the yellow, especially because it's a night race. The new LED panels that they've had for the past couple of years, they're much easier to see than the yellow flags. And especially at Qatar in the dark, you really see those yellow flags. And when you actually see the onboard from Mark's, it's actually quite difficult to see where Martin was. So I think the TV shot that we saw looked a lot worse than it was, but even then, it's a sort of questionable why they kept going. But it's not as bad as it looked just from that one shot.